ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते नारायणाय। ॐ नमो भगवते नारायणाय। शुक्लाम्बरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। अनन्तसंसारसमुद्रतार नौकायिताभ्यां गुरुभक्तिदाभ्यां वैराग्यसाम्राज्यतपूजनाभ्यां नमो नमः श्री गुरुपादुकाभ्याम्। अञ्जनानन्दनं वीरं जानकी शोकनाशनं कपीशमक्षगन्धारं वन्दे लङ्काभयङ्करम्। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। यदङ्घ्रिपङ्गेरुगरेणुलग्नं निपीय नीरं विमलान्तरङ्गः जानामि तत्त्वं निजमात्मरूपं तं नौमि नारायणतीर्थमार्यम्। नारायणतीर्थमार्यम्। हरे कृष्णा हरे कृष्णा गुरुवायूरप्पा नारायण नारायण। Namaskaram. In session 25, we saw an important episode where the Dikshita Patnis, although lacking in any formal education or scriptural knowledge, and were only simply helping their respective spouses and parents conducting sacrifices, were highly evolved to realize the Paramatman in the form of the young cowherd Krishna in an instant, and offering everything within their power unto him and the Gopalakas who accompanied Krishna nonchalantly. Let us continue that most remarkable episode with more benediction, but this time with lot more Vedantic approach towards the whole incident. We in fact saw the Slokam 91 very briefly earlier. Yajnapatnischa Mishanam Leela Gopala Vigraham Prasadayantiyam Vedaha Tatparyenam Anantite. Yajnapatyastha Mishanam Leela Gopala Vigraham Prasadayantiyam Vedaha Tatparyenam Anantite. The ecstatic Dikshapatnis, having served Krishna to their heart's content, prostrated and prayed to him before leaving that great Krishna, who by sheer Maya was standing in the mesmerizing cowherd form, while Vedas repeatedly aver that he is the only one to be totally understood and he is the one to be merged unto for our Sahajya. Prasadayantiyam Vedaha Tatparyenam Anantite. Of course, Narana Tirtha just said in one slokam, he packed a lot of information. In this context, let me share an anecdote which I heard some 50 years ago. Although I am still looking for books to authenticate what I heard. It is believed that Sri Vallabhacharya Mahaprabhu, who lived between 1479 and 1531 of Common Era, also known as Vallabha and Vishnu Swami, founded the Pushti Margam of Vaishnavism in the very vast Braj region of India at that time, almost 500 years ago. Braj was the largest region. Braj region is explained to be a triangular region with Delhi on one corner, Agra on the other, Jaipur on the west. So almost if you draw a triangle, that is the triangle within which the region was completely encompassed. Vallabha founded Pushti Margam based on Suddha Advaita or pure non-dualism. Vallabha was believed to be a blended incarnation of Radha and Krishna. Historians write that Vallabha was born in a Telugu Thailang Brahmin family that was residing in Varanasi in 15th century. The family had to run to Champaran of Chhattisgarh state, which you know very well now. Today, Chhattisgarh state is completely uniquely different. They ran off to Champaran from Varanasi because of the Muslim invasion. One of the main reasons for running off, the whole family just migrating out of Varanasi, very sadly and reluctantly, was that the young mother who carried Vallabha in her womb was to deliver the baby, and they didn't want the Muslim invasion to affect the family in any manner. That's why they had to really abandon Varanasi and run off. I will mention more on the short life of Vallabha and his scriptural contributions at yet another occasion, but I will talk about the anecdote in the concept of the Dikshita Patni's praise here, and also the request from Dikshita Patnis to Krishna that let them be allowed to remain around him all the time. That's the topic here. The anecdotal belief is that Vallabha composed the famous Madhurashtakam, which all of you are familiar with. Adaram Madhuram, Vadanam Madhuram, Nayanam Madhuram, Hasitam Madhuram, Hridayam Madhuram, Gamanam Madhuram, Madhuradipate Akhilam Madhuram. As though the ecstatic Dikshita Patnis themselves sang that Madhurashtakam in praise of Krishna. So the anecdote is that Vallabha composed this because he did Krishna Leela mostly in his works. And this episode of Dikshita Patnis begging Krishna to let them remain around him in Vrindavana is brought about by Vallabha, and it is believed that Vallabha composed that Madhurashtakam as if the pining ladies were begging Krishna to let them stay. Adaram Madhuram, Vadanam Madhuram, Nayanam Madhuram, Hasitam Madhuram, Hridayam Madhuram, Gamanam Madhuram, Madhuradipate Akhilam Madhuram. Vachanam Madhuram, Charitam Madhuram, Vadanam Madhuram, Valitam Madhuram, Chalitam Madhuram, Brahmitam Madhuram, Madhuradipate Akhilam Madhuram. Venu Madhuram, Renu Madhuram, Pani Madhuram, Vado Madhuram, Nrityam Madhuram, Satyam Madhuram, Madhuradi Agilam Maduram Geetam Madura Geetam Maduram Bhuktam Maduram Suktam Maduram Rupam Maduram Tilakam Maduram Madhuranibade Agilam Maduram Karanam Maduram Karanam Maduram Haranam Maduram Ramanam Maduram Vamitam Samitam Maduram Madhuranibade Agilam Maduram Kunja Madura Mala Madura Yamuna Madura Niti Madura Salilam Maduram Ramalam Maduram Madura Dipade Akilam Maduram Gopi Madura Leela Madura Yuktam Maduram Muktam Maduram Kritam Maduram Chitam Maduram Maduradipade Akilam Maduram Gopa Madura Gavo Madura Yati Madura Sriti Madura Dalitam Maduram Paritam Maduram Maduradipade Akilam Maduram Maduradipade Akilam Maduram Maduradipade Akilam Maduram. After that ecstatic singing of Krishna's praise, the Yajnapatnis wanted to remain with Krishna permanently and thus refused to go back to their spouses. But Krishna gently advised them that their desire to abandon their spouses and attendant responsibilities so as to be with him, and that too forever, was incorrect. Tadyata devaya janam patayo dvijatayaha patayo dvijatayaha swashadram parayishyanti yushmabhihi gruhamedinaha. In the 28th sloka of chapter 23, Bhagavan says, you should return to the sacrificial arena because your husbands, the learned brahmanas, are householders and they need your assistance to finish their respective sacrifices. By your coming away from them and then insisting that you should remain with me and not going back is going to hinder the sacrifices and your responsibilities as well. For that advice, the wives of the Brahmanas replied as follows. Sri Palyavuchuhu. Maivam viborghati bhavan gaditum drisumsam. Maivam viborghati bhavan gaditum drisumsam. Satyam kurushva nigamo tava padamulam. Satyam kurushva nigamo tava padamulam. Praptavayam Tulasidama padavasrittam. Kaishair nivodam. Kaishair nivodam. Atilangya samatta bandhu. The Dikshita Patnis replied, O Bhagavane, O Almighty, kindly do not speak such harsh and cruel words. Rather, you should fulfill your promise that you always reciprocate with your devotees in kind. Now that we have attained your lotus feet, we simply wish to remain here in the forest so we may carry upon our heads the garlands of tulasi leaves that fall from your lotus feet. So, please remember one thing. The reason why we want to be with you is not for any material relationship. We are ready to give up all our material relationships and desires. The only reason for the wish is that we would like to carry your pada dhuli as well as the tulasi leaves that fall from your garlands as you walk in Vrindavanam. We'll hold it on our head and we'll live our rest of the life in that fashion. Praptavayam tulasidama padavasrishtam kaishair nivodum atilangya samasta bandhun. How do you think that we can simply go back, but we are willing to just give away all our material desires? Sri Vishwanatha Chakravarti, about whom I have spoken earlier, who lived in the 17th century, was noted to have lived between 1626 and 1708, was a great Vaishnava Acharya. He came in the lineage of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, wrote a great commentary about the whole episode, this particular episode. So Sri Chakravarti says that the fact that the ladies offered to carry those tulasi leaves upon their heads showed their sharanagati, that they had already renounced any and all desires to become Krishna's intimate girlfriends or maid servants, a position that they knew was very difficult to achieve, even dream of, except for the most fortunate gopis, and they are not those gopis. So according to Chakravarti Thakura, these Dikshita Patnis were totally aware of their inadequacy and they are not going to become the gopis anyway. Thereby, they are not going to become intimate girlfriends or maid servants of Krishna. So fully aware that they have no such desires and they have renounced their desires, they are only asking for a simple favor, that they be allowed to continue in Vrindavanam, walk behind Krishna, so that the tulasi leaves that fall from the garland of Sri Krishna will be borne by them, adorned by them on their heads, and they will spend the rest of the life that way. So thereby the young Brahmana ladies begged to remain in Vrindavana forest in some corner, waiting for constant darshanam and holding the fallen tulasi leaves on their heads. They say, give us some place, some corner in Vrindavana for nothing else, just to have a look at you. And also, whenever those tulasi leaves fall from your feet, we will just hold it on our head. Chakravarti Thakura says, if the Lord had then asked, then what will your family members say for this unusual desire of yours and request to me? According to the great saint, he also had the answer ready. He says, the Dikshita Patnis would have replied promptly, we have already transcended our so-called relationships and the material bandham because we have seen and we are seeing you, Supreme Bhagavan, face to face. And why should we go back to the cycle of births and deaths and the material life when we had finally attained something very close to Saija? We are right looking at you, the Brahman, Bhagavan. And why should we go back? What have we done? Is it not that when we look at you and we have a Purna Darshanam of yours, knowing that you are Bhagavan, fully aware that we are conscious that you are Bhagavan, when we are Krishna conscious, is it not that our cycle has ended and why should we again start the cycle? This is the question which Thakura raises. In this place, of course, there is no such answer But Krishna says answer in Bhagavatam, subsequently how he coaxes them, we will be seeing it. In between, I wanted to interject something like an anecdote here. Uthagada Venkata Subbayar or Venkata Kavi, who lived between 1700 and 1765, he did some remarkable poetry. Some of his songs, especially on Krishna Leela, are ecstatically superior and there are no parallels. As though he had seen the plight of the Dikshita Patnis and a simple desire that they expressed to Krishna and a simple request they wanted Krishna to accommodate, he repeats in a beautiful song. That song is a Sankirtana Paddhati song, very popular for 100 plus years. Pullai Piravi Taravenum Kanna Punidamana Pala Koti Piravi Tandalum Brindavanamadiluru Pullai Piravi Taravenum. And Venkatakavi changes in the very second line, Pullayinum Nedunal Nilladu. So I am changing my mind. I am requesting you to give me the life of a grass in Vrindavanam so that you will walk over it. But now I remember, this grass will dry up very fast and they will disappear. If I am going to be a grass, my time will be very limited. I don't want to be. I really want to have a very long-term relationship with you just to have the pleasure of looking at you. How do I do that? Pullayinum nedunal nilladu adalinal kallai piravi taravendum. So in Vrindavanam, let me change my request. The part one of my request should be now thrown away. The real request is now, instead of pull, make me a kal. Make me a stone. Because the stone will remain as long as the creation is there. Until creation turns into pradaya, the stone is going to be there. So, kallai peravi taravenum. Vrindavana madiloru kallai peravi taravenum. Pullai peravi taravenum. Kanna pullai peravi taravenum. Kanna pullai peravi taravenum. Kanna pullai piravi taravenum. Kanna pullai piravi taravenum. Kanna punidamana palakodi piravi tandalum. Vrindavanamidiloru pullai piravi taravenum. Kanna punidamana palakodi piravi tandalum. Vrindavanamadiloru pullai piravi taravenum. Kanna punidamana palakodi piravi tandalum. Vrindavanamadiloru pullai piravi taravenum. Kanna punidamana palakodi piravi tandalum. Vrindavanamadiloru pullai piravi taravenum. Kanna punidamana palakodi piravi tandalum. Vrindavanamidiloru pullai piravi taravenum. Kanna புல்லாகிடும் நெடுநாள் நில்லாது. புல்லாகிடும் நெடுநாள் நில்லாது. புல்லாகிடும் நெடுநாள் நில்லாது. ஆதலினால் கல்லாய் பிறவி தரவேணுமே. கண்ணா புல்லாகிடும் நெடுநாள் நில்லாது. ஆதலினால் கல்லாய் பிறவி தரவேணுமே. கண்ணா புல்லாகிடும் நெடுநாள் நில்லாது. ஆதலினால் கல்லாய் பிறவி தரவேணுமே. கண்ணா கல்லாய் பிறவி தரவேணும். கமல மலரிணைகள் அடைய எனது உள்ளம் புலகித முற்றிடும் பவமாற்றிடும் என புல்லாய் பிறவி தரவேணும். கமல மலரிணைகள் அடைய எனது உள்ளம் உலகித முற்றிடும் பவமாற்றிடும் எனவே புல்லாய் பிறவி தரவேணு கண்ணா புனிதமான பல கோடி பிறவி தந்தாலும் பிருந்தாவனம் இதில் ஒரு கல்லாய் பிறவி தரவேணு ஒரு கணம் உன் பதம் படும் எந்தன் மேலே மறுகணம் நான் உயர்வேன் மென்மேலே ஒரு கணம் உன் பதம் படும் எந்தன் மேலே மறுகணம் நான் உயர்வேன் மென்மேலே உன் திருமேனி என் மேலே அமர்ந்திடும் ஒரு காலே திருமேனி என் மேலே அமர்ந்திடும் ஒரு காலே திருமேனி என் மேலே அமர்ந்திடும் ஒரு காலே திருமகளென மலரடி பெயர்ந்து உனை தொடர்ந்தராதை குட்டு தருவேன் திருமகளென மலரடி பெயர்ந்து உனை தொடர்ந்தராதை குமிடம் தருவேன் திசை திசை எங்கனும் பரவிடும் குழலிசை மயங்கி வரும் பல கோபியருடனே திறந்தர சமிகு நடந்தியாடவும் நயமிக கலந்து பாடவும் சிறந்தர சமிகு நடம் நீயாடவும் துதியோடு லயமிக கலந்து பாடவும் இழைப்பிலே வரும் கழிப்பிலே எனக்கு இணையார் என மகிழ்வேன் இழைப்பிலே வரும் கழிப்பிலே எனக்கு இணையார் என மகிழ்வேன் இழைப்பிலே வரும் கழிப்பிலே எனக்கு இணையார் என மகிழ்வேன் தவமிகு சுரரோடு முனிவரும் இயலா தனித்த பெரும் பேரடைவேனே தவமிகு சுரரோடு முனிவரும் இயலா தனித்த பெரும் பேரடைவேனே எவ்வுயிர்க்கும் கலக்கும் இறைவனே யமுனை துறைவனே எனக்கும் ஒரு கல்லாய் பிறவி தரவேணும் எவ்வுயிர்க்கும் கலக்கும் இறைவனே யமுனை துறைவனே எனக்கும் ஒரு கல்லாய் பிறவி தரவேணுமே கண்ணா புனிதமான பல கோடி பிறவி தந்தாலும் பிருந்தாவனம் அதில் ஒரு கல்லாய் பிறவி தரவேணும் கண்ணா கல்லாய் பிறவி தரவேணும் கண்ணா கண்ணா Even after their plea, when Krishna continues to advise them to return to their respective homes, the ladies are unconvinced and they raise another question for the samadhanam that Krishna has given earlier. Grinanti no napadaya pitaro sutava Grinanti no Grinanti no napadaya pitaro sutava Nabratu nabandhu nasuhrudaha kritayeva chanye Grinanti no napadaya pitaro sutava Nabratu bandhu suhrudaha kritayeva chanye Tasmad bhavat prabhadayogo patitatmanamno Tasmad bhavat prabhadayogo patitatmanamno nanya bhavat gatihi arindama tadvidehi. In 30th sloka, this is the question by the ladies again. O Krishna, you are saying that, go back to them. But our husbands, fathers, sons, brothers, and all the other relatives, and also our friends, will disown us. They will no longer take us back because we ran away from that. Grinnantino na pateha pitarau sutava na bratu bandhu sugrudaha krita evacha anye. And how could anyone else be willing to give us shelter, knowing what we did, and you know very well. Therefore, since we have thrown ourselves at your lotus feet and have no other destination, tasmad bhavat prabadayoho patitatmanamno nanya bhavat gatihi arindamatat videhi. Bhagavane, you are a chastiser of enemies. You take care of the whole world. You are the controller. Since we have no other destination, we are anati. We have fallen at your feet. Is it not your dharmam that you should grant our desire when we have no one else and you are the only refuge for us? For that, it is not that simple with Krishna. Krishna has answered for everything. He then says, Patayo na abhyasuyeran Patayo na abhyasuyeran Pitrubhratru sutadayaha Patayo na abhyasuyeran Pitrubhratru sutadaya Lokasya vomaya upeta deva api anumanvate. Lokasya vomaya upeta deva api anumanvate. You gave me some problems, but I will give you a lot more answers beyond the questions that you raised. Be rest assured, Bhagavan says that your husbands will not be inimical toward you, nor your fathers, brothers, sons, other relatives, and the general public, about all of whom you spoke just now. No one will have any asuya for you. Nobody will have animosity. On the contrary, they'll come running to you with folded hands. Don't worry. Because I will personally advise them of the situation if they are already not ready for that. By the time you return to them, you will see what is going to happen there in your various households. They are going to receive you with open hands. Indeed, even the devatas who are now waiting because the sacrifice has been stopped, without you the sacrifice cannot proceed, thereby all the devatas who have been invoked in the preliminary part of the sacrifice waiting to have their Habir-bhagam, Deva api anumanvate. They will also not abandon you. On the contrary, they will give total approval for your return and they will bless you wholeheartedly. So when all these things have been already said by Krishna saying, I will take care of everything, unfortunately, the Dikshita Patnis could not come up with any more excuses. Because whatever excuse they gave to be with him, that has been floored by Krishna. Krishna takes a different approach. He points out to the Dikshita Patnis that people in general would not appreciate an intimate affair between him, Krishna, the cowherd. Even though they may argue, he still superficially appears as a cowherd boy, Yadava boy, and they are the wives from the Brahmana community, supposedly in the hierarchy, something very veritable and powerfully in the upper echelons. So he says this will not look nice. And also he says your devotion and love for me would only increase most efficiently in separation. The more you feel a sense of longing and separation for me, your devotion will be 1,000 times, million times more as the day progresses, and you will be coming back to me fast enough at the end of this janma, and I assure you there won't be any more birth or death for you. We can cut the birth cycles for you. In other words, it would be best all around if they continued to fix their minds on Bhagavan Krishna and thus went about with the process they had been practicing throughout their lives doing their responsibilities. The Bhagavan and his bona fide representative, the spiritual master that he had become now, they expertly engage the devotees, namely Dikshita Patnis, in different types of service so that all of them can quickly return to his lotus feet. So first he started as Krishna, then the Krishna, the Acharya. The Acharya is giving them the advice as to how to see that the separation is used as a means to increase their devotion intensely so that he can come back to him, they can come back to him fast enough. Sri Leela Sukha, the 13th century composer, the great devotee and a contemporary of Swami Vedanta Desika, emphasizes with the plight of these ladies and becomes one of the ladies when he makes this slokam here, this 40th slokam in the first chapter in Krishna Karnamritam. Leela Sukha assumes the role of a lady here, one of those affected ladies. He deva he daita he deva he daita he bhuvanaika bandho he Krishna he chabala he karunaika sindho he deva he daita he bhuvanaika bandho he Krishna he chapala he karunaika sindho he Nata he Ramana he Nayana Virama Haha Kadananu Bhavitasi Padam Drishorme he Deva he Daita he Bhuvanaika Bandho he Krishna he Chapala he Karunaika Sindho he Nata he Ramana he Nayana Virama Haha Kadanu Bhavitasi Padam Drishorme. This is a beautiful slokam. Just like how we analyze this 15th Tirupavai of Andal, Yelle Ilankiliye, every time we talk of Tirupavai and when we come to the 15th Tirupavai, which is almost like a middle junction, we use the Tirupavai as an interesting divine conversation. And I am sure most of you remember that Yelle Ilankiliye Innum Murangidiyo, as if it is a conversation between Andal and a lady who thinks that she knows a lot about Krishna and then lies down in a corner. She doesn't want to get up and come for Krishna Anubhavam. Similar to that, this particular poetry of Sri Leela Sukha is worth analyzing it in a divine conversation. Leela Sukha says in the last line of this slokam, Haha Katanu Bhavitasi. When can I apperceive you? I'm using deliberately the word apperceive you. When can I apperceive you? Hey Deva, oh Bhagavane. Well, most of you may be aware there is a distinction between perceive and apperceive. The latter is to be aware of perceiving. Perceive is just perceiving. But apperceive is the awareness of perceiving. In other words, to understand a perception by linking that mentally with a mass of existing ideas of the same. That is apperceive. He says, Haha Kadanu Bhavitasi. When can I apperceive you, Ho Deva? That's how he commences, but he puts it in the end of the slokam. So let us see the dialogue. Krishna says, how can you immortals are so unapparent, aprakashamana? Then the lady says, how can it be? Because Leela Sukha is the lady here. So Leela Sukha says, how can it be? Remember, you cannot go against the definition of Deva. I called you Deva. Remember Krishna? What is the meaning of Deva or the definition of Deva? Dyotanatiti deva or Deepyate deva prakashate kridate iti deva. So this is the etymological definition here. Dyotanatiti deva or Deepyate prakashate kridate iti deva. Is it not so? So Deva is self-luminous, self-manifest. Hence I called you Deva. Swatasiddha prakasha swabhava. Krishna says, maybe, but what is the guarantee that you like me most? Let's come to the topic now. Leela Sukha says, that's why I said Daita. Krishna, do you remember I used the word Daita? Because Daita means you alone are the most cherished one. That's why we are running after you. Then Krishna needles the lady or Leela here, Leela Sukha. There are many more cherishing me, not you alone. I cannot be running after you because I'm answerable to a lot of people. Further, the Leela Sukha's answer is, I know. That's why he said, Ye Jagat Eka Bandho or Bhuvanaika Bandho, Jagadeka Bandho or Bhuvanaika Bandho. Didn't you not listen to me calling you Bhuvanaika Bandho? You are a universal friend. You may have a lot of people who may be cherishing you, but you are also available to me because I am one of them. And universal entities do not distinguish between cherishers by degrees of difference. Somebody may be big, somebody may be small, someone may be a great saint or a sage, or someone may be totally useless like me. But if you are a Bhuvanaika Bandho or Jagati Eka Bandho, one friend for the entire universe, then you better not distinguish between the various cherishers or groups or degrees of difference. Then Krishna says, I may appear to be that way to some, but I may not appear the same way for others. You should know that is my will. I already told you a number of times about it. Leela Sukha says, yes. I have heard about it. That is why I called you Chapala. Because you now argued with me about the Bhuvanaika Bandhu and then you are saying you are appearing one way to one person and another way to another person, I already know about it. That's why I called you Chapala. Because you are the most mercurial entity. But I also said Karunaika Sindhu. Even though you have Chapalam, since you are a singular ocean of mercy, Karuna Eka Sindhu, Karunaika Sindhu, in that you have more mercy than mercuriality. So, when I put these two together, you are Chapala at the same time Karunaika Sindhu, then I think the Karunaika Sindhu aspect of it is really big. So, I need your visitation. Krishna says, what big bond exists between you and me to make that ocean of mercy to outflow its shore to you? Give me a reason why that Sindhu should be really flowing in your direction. Is there a particular reason or is there a bond that exists between you and me? You explain to me, then I will explain to you my answer to that. Then Leela Sukha says, it is very simple, Krishna, you have not understood. That of a master and servant. When I say it is, the relationship is you are the master and I am the servant. And when I called you, hey Nata, because hey Nata, you know Krishna, the definition is Swaswami Bhavarupa Vishesha. It will be apt for you to please your servants, adequate and proper. That's why you are the master and I am the servant. Well, Krishna says, lords appear at the pleasure of their lordships, not at the beck and call of the servants. You should be knowing that the master has got the superiority. Then Leela Sukha answers, that is why I called you your Ramana, a delighter of one and all without echelonic distinctions. In other words, there is no echelon for you. There is no rank or a hierarchy. For you, all the servants are one and the same. So you are not going to distinguish one from the other. So I am protected that way. So therefore, reveal yourself to me, going by a pure definition of that. Since you are a Ramana. Krishna says, agreed. I concede that I am Ramana. So let me take and give delight to your heart of hearts by showing myself to your own eyes only. Then Leela Sukha then says, because you are Nayanabhirama, the ultimate I feast and ad infinitum, I have nothing else to ask you. But one thing you remember, all said and done, Hey Krishna, me drishopadam. Hey Krishna, me drishopadam. My very side's object is you. நான் கண்ணால் பார்க்கறதே உனக்கு தான், கண்ணை திறக்கிறதே உனக்கு தான், என்னுடைய விஷனே உனக்கு தான். மை திருஷோபதம் கதானு பவிதாசி ஹாஹா. When are you going to show your presence to me? Aha, alas. That is what I really want. Krishna, when can I really feast my eyes on you? Show me. Show yourself to me. So this is the beautiful slokam from Leela Sukha, because he who takes the role of one of the Yajnapatnis or the Dikshita Patnis and then starts arguing with Krishna. Yajnapatnis reluctantly went back to their spouses who did not find any fault with their wives and together with them completed the sacrifice. Tatraika vidrudha bhatra bhagavantam yatashrutam hrudopagukhya vijahau Deham karma anubandhanam. This is sloka 35 of the same chapter 23. One of the ladies had been forcibly kept back by her husband. When she heard the others describe the Supreme Lord Krishna, she embraced him within her heart. One of the tricks that Krishna taught all other ladies, which she already did, because she was precluded from going and having a physical darshanam of Krishna along with the other ladies. Her husband really held her captive. So what she decided was thought of Krishna, and Krishna appeared inside her. So she felt so ecstatic that she embraced him within her heart. And in that instant, because she did that, she became one with Brahman and she gave up her material body. The basis of her bondage to material activity was relinquished. Hirdya upagrihya vijahau deham karma anubandhanam. Tatra eka vidrita bhartra bhagavantam yata srutam hridopagruhya vijahau deham karma anubandhanam. That instant she lost her body and she had the mukti and she joined Brahman, Paramatma Krishnan, because Krishna was in her heart and he took care of her. Taking note of their wives' pure transcendental devotion for Bhagavan Krishna, the Supreme Bhagavan, Brahman, and seeing their own lack of devotion, the Brahmanas were absolutely embarrassed, felt shameful, most sorrowful, and began to condemn themselves. The Brahmanas start lamenting as follows. Dig janmanaha trivriti yaddad dig Vratam dig bahugnatam dikkulam dig kriyadaksham vimukaye tvadokshaje. They become so frustrated, they use some strongest words. Dik janmanaha trivriti yattat dig vratam dig bahugnatam dikkulam dikriyadaksham vimukaye tvadokshaje. The Brahmana said, to hell with our threefold birth. Trivridu. Naha janma trivridu. We had threefold birth. They are useless. Our vow of celibacy and our extensive learning, they are useless. Hell with them. And again, to hell with our aristocratic background and our expertise in the rituals of service, about which we have been very much proud. These are all condemned because we were inimical to the Supreme Bhagavan who came right before us. As explained in the prior session, the words Trivid Janma or threefold birth refer to physical birth, Brahminical initiation, and initiation into the performance of Vedic sacrifice. These are the three different births a person who claims to be a Brahmin have to go through. Physical birth from Yoni, then the Brahminical initiation or the when he becomes Dvijanma, and the third one is initiation into the performance of the Vedic sacrifice, that's a Diksha. All of that has become useless because we are ignorant of the absolute truth, the Supreme Lord Krishna, that you are the Paramatman and Brahman and who should be pursued. Nanu swartha vimudanam brahmattanam grihehaya ahona smarayamasaha gopavakyehi satangatihi. This again Bhagavatam, Sloka 45. Indeed, infatuated as we are with our household routine, we have deviated completely from the real aim of our life. But now, just see how Bhagavan, through the words of these simple cowherd boys, has reminded us of the ultimate destination of all true transcendentalists. Anyata purna kamasya kaivalya adya sishampatehe Ishitavyaha kimasmabihi Ishasyaidat vidambanam. Otherwise, why would the Supreme Controller, whose every desire is already fulfilled, and particularly who is the Master of Liberation and all other benedictions, appear before us, enact this pretense with us who are always under his control? Why should he do a drama in front of us? But he wanted to give an opportunity, but we didn't take it. Hitwanyan bhajate yam srihi padasparsha asayasakrit swatma doshapavarghena tadhyancha janamohini. Hoping for the touch of his lotus feet, the goddess of fortune perpetually worships him alone, leaving aside all others and renouncing her pride and fickleness. That Bhagavan came begging to us for food is certainly astonishing to everyone. Even this was not understood by us who are totally blinded by our arrogance. Look at this. Deshakalaha pratagdravyam mantra tantra dvijo agneyaha devata yajamanasya kratuhu dharmasya yanmayaha sa eva Bhagavan sakshat Vishnuhu yogeshwara ishwaraha Jato Yadushvitya Shrunman Hyapi Muda Navidmahe. This is the 49th sloka. All the aspects of sacrifice, the auspicious place and time, the various items of paraphernalia, the Vedic hymns, the prescribed rituals, the priests and sacrificial fires, the devatas, the patron of the sacrifice, the offering that should be given in sacrifice, and the pious results, they are all obtained easily because they are all simply manifestations of your opulence, Krishna. Yet even though we had heard that Supreme Brahman, Vishnu, the Lord of all mystic controllers, had taken birth in the Yadu dynasty, that is you, we were so foolish that we could not recognize that you are none other than that Brahman himself. And that was our blunder. So the Brahmanas feel crestfallen and ashamed that the Brahman was in front of them, and still having studied scriptural sanctions and Brahman, none of the aspects learned by them from the great Vedas could rescue them from their ahankara and ignorance to get tuned on to Brahman who stood before them. In fact, in Taittiriya Upanishad, in Brahmavalli, there is a very profound slokam. Yo veda nihitam guhayam parame vyoman shoshnute sarvan kaman saha brahmana vipanchita iti. He that knows Brahman of the nature described above, yo veda nihitam guhayam parame vyoman, abiding in the cave in the highest heaven, attains all desires without any exception. But you should be the knower. he enjoys all the pleasures that one may desire. He enjoys them all simultaneously because he is going to be one with the omniscient Brahman. The realization gives him everything. Swami Madhavananda, who lived between 1888 and 1965, he was the president of the Ramakrishna order and who wrote the famous treatises on Brahma Sutra and Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. He explains the word Brahman in the process of his treatise on Brihadaranyaka. According to Swami, it means the oldest, the biggest, Tejas, which is the fire, Jala is water, and Prithvi, the earth. They all emerge from Brahman in that order. So they are called Thajja. Tejas, Jala, and Prithvi. Together they are known as Thajja. Then they disappear in Brahman in the reverse order, so they are called Thalla. So the disappearance is first Prithvi, then Jala, and then Tejas. In the past, in the present, and in the future, they are sustained in Brahman. They are therefore one with Brahman. The Upanishads say here to think over this with kratu, that is, with great effort and with deep concentration. Kratu also means will or willpower. So it is your will that decides your destiny, how to approach Brahman and be one with the Brahman. Shri Krishna said to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, Yam yam vapi swaran bhavam tyajatyante kalevaram tam tamai vaiti kaunteya sada tadbhava bhavita. O son of Kunti, at the time of death, when a person leaves the body, he attains whatever object he thinks of as he has been previously constantly absorbed in its thought, about which we have listened to number of Puranic stories also. In fact, the Jadabharata example is typical. When you look at this Bhagavad Gita Vakyam and the Jadabharata Sloka, it will really be a very fitting example. When a person leaves the body, whatever he thinks of Brahman, he gets absorbed into Brahman. If he thinks of something else, he becomes that. This shows the importance of your kratu. That is, your effort and the concentration. The Yajnapatis were in constant concentration due to their love for Krishna. The Brahman is none else than Krishna, Krishna is none else than Brahman, and they were in total concentration on Krishna. And thus they were sure to attain Sahijya at Bhagavan's feet, and their repentant spouses too got the grace of the Paramatman. In Bhagavad Gita again, in chapter 4, we have seen this famous slokam, Brahmarpanam, Brahma Havir Brahmagnyo, Brahmana Hutam, Brahmaivatena Gantavyam Brahma Karma Samadhina. Sloka 24 of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4. Brahmarpanam Brahma Havir Brahmagnav Brahmana Ahutam Brahmaivatena Gantavyam Brahma Karma Samadhina. A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna Prema is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. Pattude Adiyavarku Eliyavan. That's what happened to the Dikshita Patnis, who had no formal education of any sorts but were constantly in absolute love with Bhagavan Krishna. Whereas their spouses who were well read, well inducted by Vedabhyasa Mudaha, as Siddhanta Kaumudi says, Tasmai Namo Bhagavate Krishnaya Akuntamedase Yanmaya Mohidadiya Brahmamaha Karma Vartmasu. This is actually Sloka 50 in Srimad Bhagavatam, Dasamaskandam, 23rd chapter, let us offer obeisance to Krishna, the Supreme Brahman. Tasmai Namo Bhagavate Krishnaya Akuntamedase. His intelligence is never bewildered, whereas we, confused by his power of illusion, are simply wandering about on the paths of just fruitive work, albeit we have been studying Brahman through Vedas and his expansions in the form of Upanishads. Instead of realizing what is Brahman, from the various anecdotes that we have been watching, including that of Dikshita Patnis, people get so involved with Vedas and Upanishads, etc. Nothing wrong in intensely getting into that, but without realizing that the goal is Brahman, our goal is Krishna. The Dikshitas finally realize and surrender like this. Savaina adhyaha purushaha swamaya mohitatmanam avijñatanubhavanam shantum mahartyati atikramam. Krishna, we were bewildered by your illusory potency and thus could not understand your influence as the original Brahman per se. Now we hope you will kindly forgive our offense. That's how they are pleading. Itis swagam anusmrutya krishnete kritahelanaha. Dikshava vrajamata kamsat bhitana chachalan. Shuka completes this with the final statement to Parikshit saying, even though these Brahmanas were reflecting on the sin that they had committed seriously by neglecting Krishna, and that they were very eager to see him and get deliverance, their fear for King Kamsa prevented it and they did not dare go to Vraja, and thereby they had to go through their cycle of birth and death. This is how Shuka says to Parikshit, saying, even at that point, even though repentance was there, they were not able to go to Krishna because they were afraid of Kamsa. This is the way our life is made up of. That's why these stories are very relevant, because unless we are able to take that step, bold step like the Dikshita Patnis, we will probably remain only like the Dikshitas. In the next session, we will conclude this episode with a rare song of Tirtha, Bala Gopala Maam Uddhara Krishna Parama Kalyana Gunakara Krishna, which Tirtha writes in the opera as the final benediction of Krishna by Dikshita Patnis before returning to their respective households. One of the most complex songs that Tirtha wrote with 10 stanzas and intricate jatis that follow them. That's ideal for dances, however, seemingly rarely attempted by our musicians and dancers. In fact, that song and the slokams that explain the return of the Yajñapatnis conclude the third Tarangam, which we'll be seeing somewhat elaborately in the next episode. Narayana 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 Narayana. Hare Krishna, Thiruvaiyaru, Narayana.